Great. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Sydney North Local Planning Panel. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Camaragal on which we meet today, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. The North Sydney Local Planning Panel is a New South Wales government mandated local planning panel exercising the functions of North Sydney Council as the consent authority under section 4.82 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 as amended, and acts pursuant to a direction of the Minister for Planning issued under section 9.1 of the Act dated 23rd of February 2018. The meeting today is to consider two planning proposals that propose to amend the North Sydney Local Environmental Plan. The first at 253 to 267 Pacific Highway, North Sydney, and the second at 45 Mclaren Street, North Sydney. For the benefit of members of the community unfamiliar with these planning processes, planning proposals are not development applications. Any future development on these sites will be subject to separate development applications in due course. So that is just to clarify the purpose of today's meeting. The panel members for today are me, Helen Lockhead, as the chair, Jan Morell and John McInerney as expert members, and Jan Van Haven as the community representative. Sorry, Jane Van Haven as the community representative. Now, does any member of the panel have a declaration of interest to make on any matter before we begin?
No.
No conflict, thank you.
And Jane?
I have a conflict of interest with item 1 on the Pacific Highway. Oh, sorry, a perceived conflict of interest with the Pacific Highway item, so I will sit out from that one.
Okay, thank you very much, Jane. So Jane will sit out on Pacific Highway, and we'll come back from a consideration of Mclaren Street. And I myself have no conflicts of interest. The panel has been provided with assessment reports prepared by council staff, and council staff have briefed the panel on the key issues the applications raise. And we have also read your submissions, and so there is no need to repeat these. I request that you raise issues and focus on those that have not been covered. If another speaker has raised a point that you would like to make again, please confirm your agreement rather than repeating the same point in the interests of time. The meeting is being held by public teleconference due to current precautions and arising out of COVID, and hopefully we'll return to face-to-face meetings in due course. I'm requesting, as the panel chair, that we all are considerate and respectful of each other and remain on mute until I ask you to speak at the meeting. I also request that none of you interject while another person is speaking, otherwise I'll have to request that you are no longer part of the teleconference. Today, we have 14 people registered to address the panel, and 14 parties represented to address the panel. We will first hear from members of the public on each matter, and then we'll hear from the applicant who may like to address issues raised by the members of the public at that time. The panel has been provided with copies of all the submissions received, and therefore, again, as I said earlier, there's no need to reiterate points made in those submissions. Our usual practice is to allow each speaker 5 minutes to make their points. And I also ask that each speaker is to be heard in silence, and courtesy and respect is observed always. We may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understanding of what is being said, and after hearing from the speakers, the panel will adjourn the meeting to confer and make our determinations. If you have registered to speak, your address to the panel will be recorded, and this meeting is being recorded right now, as all public meetings are, and they are then uploaded to the council's website. The audio recording will be available on council's website within 7 days from this meeting. There is to be no other recording or filming of this meeting, and any such recording may only occur with the prior permission of the panel. So thank you for your patience, and we'll begin with the first item, which is 253 to 267 Pacific Highway, North Sydney. So I've noted the first speaker on my list is Vincent and Wendy Lamb. Vincent and Wendy Lamb here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you have 5 minutes to speak. So if you'd like to just be succinct and address the panel, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, we understand.
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, we actually are living on
number 10.
number 10 Church Street. And
North Sydney.
yeah, in North Sydney. And the suggested property actually is located right at the back of our property. Our property is the Heritage Terrace, and it's been built, you know, for more than 100 years. And we have actually have a couple of concerns about the construction at the back of our property, because it seems that it is a high-rise building to be built out according to the proposal. But when we bought the property back to about more than 10 years ago, you know, on the Pacific Highway that side, actually all the low-rise commercial buildings, and also according to the council information we obtained, that it won't be allowed to build out a high-rise building. So we are quite concerned and very disappointed that the developer will build a high-rise building right at the back of us. And number one, we're very concerned about our privacy in future if they have a high-rise building, so we will be overlooked by those neighbors in the building. Number two is concerning us about during the construction, it must create a lot of noise. So we wonder whether there will be noise control in place. And number three, we also very, very concerned about the access, as same as our neighbors, because a church lane is right at the back from our properties. So it's a very narrow, about 3 meters wide lane access to get into our parking area. So we need the access very often, every day, 24/7, which is very, very important for us. So that could be affecting our daily life significantly. And also, I wonder whether the new developer will have the insurance to cover any of our damages, because our heritage homes are all over 100 years. So, you know, if there's a construction right at the back, very close to our properties here, so it's very threatening. And also, we also concerned about the shadows. According to the envelope, we understand if the high-rise building to be built out, the shadows will be right at the back of our properties. So our bedrooms, our balconies, we have the shadow cast, and we will lose a lot of, not only sunlight, that will be include a lot of natural light. So we will be living in the mushroom, in the very dark room in future. So I hope that, you know, I can find out what will be the construction plan like. And hopefully that we don't want to have the high-rise building to be built out right at the back of our properties.
There's one more additional point too. We have mentioned to Neil before, we really object to have any balcony facing our side, so people can walk out to the balcony and overlook our property. And our bedroom is actually facing towards that building. So there's a lot of privacy concern in there. If there's any balcony, people can stand over there and overlook us. So we would like to request if there's any building in the future, no balcony, will be facing outside. And that means the eastern side of the property. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments. Just to clarify, again, this is a planning proposal, not a development application. So considerations of construction noise and dilapidation reports and the like would be normally a condition of a development application at a later stage. Okay, so but the issues that you've raised about privacy, height, bulk, overshadowing would be addressed, and we'll ask the applicant to address some of the issues that you've raised. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker I have registered is Wu Zhang. Wu, are you there? Or Zhang Wu?
Yep, they're there. Hello.
We can just see the top of your head. So perhaps you could adjust your camera so we can see you properly.
Yep, so they're there, but there's no one. Okay, I don't know. So.
Okay, don't worry. All right. If you can't adjust your camera, that's fine. Feel free to just begin your presentation. You have 5 minutes.
I don't think they're there. Yeah, I'll just give them a call.
Oh, do you think they're not?
They're there, but they're not. Yeah, I don't know.
Wu, are you there? Zhang Wu? Yeah, it's perhaps you could give them a call, and in the meantime, I might move on to the next speaker. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll give them a call.
Okay, the next speakers registered are Wen and Yao Zhao.
They don't seem to be there.
Is that Yao O'Neill?
They're not there either.
No, she's there, but you're on mute. I can see you.
Oh no, she's there. Yeah. Hang on, let's ask. I'll ask them to unmute.
Can you unmute, please?
Hi, how are you doing?
Yes, we can hear you now. Okay,
yes,
great.
We're on Yao. I'm the owner of 6 and 8 Mclaren Street, no Sydney. And my mom, her iPad is not working, which is Ukyong. So I have to tell what is going on our property because our property is just next to the development site, which is PP2. Yeah.
Wait. Are you here for 253 to 267 Pacific Highway?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Just to be sure. Yeah, okay. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yes. The reason why, because our townhouses is next to the developing site, on the developer side of 253 to 267 Pacific Highway. It's in the corner of Pacific Highway and Mclaren Street, our property at. The reason why we are 100% not happy with the building high-rise next to our house, the first is it can make us house collapse, crackers as foundation. So can we collapse our house straight away because it's high-rise just next to the small house when you build. So another thing is...
It's a major concern because even if there was any damage done to a heritage listed building, what insurance would actually cover what it's been heritage listed for?
It's not heritage property.
Yeah, no, just to note, this is not a development application, but it's a planning proposal. So any issues around construction conditions and dilapidation reports and remediation would be subject to a future development application, not this planning proposal.
Okay. As you can imagine, big building next to our tiny little townhouse, it's not balanced from town planner point of view at all. So from our area citizens, I think no one is like to look the high-rise building next to tiny little house right next to the high-rise building. It doesn't look good, you know. It just from big point of view, from council point of view, and from us point of view is will totally destroy our sun, and it may crackers our foundation of our house, so it's not safe to live there anymore after the house be built. So no one knows the foundation what's going on, but it could be dangerous to live there continually after the apartment be built.
Sure.
Also during the apartment be built. And another thing is, even we not living there, we try to rent it out during the construction period time. It could be no one want to take it. It could lose our business, or you know, our mortgage or whatever, how to pay for it. And the third thing is, property value will be dropped. So in that way, we lose a lot of money, and we wondering, you know, how from personal point of view, we will lose a lot of money because the little house, it doesn't look good next to big building behind of us. It just looks not right from whole town of the view. Imagine that, just little townhouse next to big building. I don't know who will, that area will look like that, like to look like that. And the third, when you're building the construction, we won't be able to, no one will live there, and we get a plenty loss for that. And we don't know how to pay our mortgage, stuff like that. It's, yeah.
Just the dirt and particles in the air. I mean, wearing masks is one thing, but
how could sleep with a mask? So that's what we're confessing about. So we need the council to have a think or like our situations and help us make the right decisions. So yeah. Yeah, so yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Yes, most important thing, it's very dangerous to live after the house be built because no one knows what's the foundation. It's cracked or it's very dangerous, you know.
Yeah, as I noted, the development application be subject to conditions, a future development application, but as this is a planning proposal, it's not for the consideration of today's meeting. It'll be a consideration at the time a development application is submitted, okay? So you'll be able to make that submission in due course.
well, we hopefully it doesn't get to that stage.
We request a private interview with my mom because her iPhone is not working. So we would love to see council personally because it's just next to our house. You know, we take it very seriously. It will be big impact on us, and most important is not safe anymore after the big building next to us be built.
Since the development proposal was listed on the building next door to the houses, that we've been trying to seek meetings with the town planner at North Sydney Council. Can't say it's been an easy process, so I apologise if our statements aren't relevant to this part of the meeting, but hopefully it doesn't get to the next stage.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for your comments, and I've noted your comments about the height and the bulk and the impacts on the scale of your building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to our second speaker, Wu Xiong. Have we got them back?
Sorry, that's the same people.
Yes,
So
no.
Yeah.
It's the mother.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Same family.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that was your mum that we couldn't hear. So all right. So we'll just move on to Tim and Georgina Harricks.
They're observing only.
Okay. So Tim and Georgina, we've got your submission, so you're quite welcome to just observe the meeting. So now we'll move on to the applicant, and who's represented today by Tim Turpin from Legacy Property. We also have Adam Peacock from Legacy Property, Siobhan McInerney from PTW Architects, and Samantha Polkinghorn from NBRS Architecture, and Chris Kukant and Stephen White from Urbis. So I'll hand over to who is going to be the main spokesperson on behalf of the applicant.
I'll just say a few words. Yeah, it's Adam Peacock from Legacy Property.
Adam, okay. I just can't see you, Adam. Do you have a camera?
Can you see? I'm sharing a camera with my colleague, Tim.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Helen. Firstly, we just wanted to say that we're very happy to see the recommendation for support in Council's report to send the proposal for gateway determination. We've had some really good sessions with Council and its consultant over the last 12 months. I think we all agree that we've arrived at a pretty good outcome that reflects all of the collaboration that's taken place over the last 12 months. Ultimately, we think it's a great proposal, and I think it's really good timing as well for a project like this, with the Victoria Cross Metro coming online in the next couple of years. I won't say too much more about the project in that sense, but I did just want to address a couple of those queries in the Council report relating to the height, the 37-metre height limit that's proposed. We've been through the calculations in the Council report, and the minor discrepancies relate to really 3 issues. The first being the topography of the site. So in the Council report, they allowed 2 metres for the topography, whereas the topography does actually slope by more than that. This is actually, it is actually acknowledged in the Council report that it might be appropriate to allow for more for the topography, and we do think that would be the right approach. The second issue was the ground floor retail height. So in the Council report, they had 3.7 metres for the ground floor retail, but we understand under the ADG it should be about 4.4 metres for ground floor retail. And then the third issue related to the lift overrun. So we had an allowance of 1.5 metres for the lift overrun, and in the Council report, only 1 metre was allowed for that. So after you reflect all of these things in the calculation, we believed we're aligned on what the appropriate height limit for the site is. So we hope that helps the panel to understand how we've arrived at the 37-metre height limit. In relation to a few of the comments from the neighbours, I appreciate, Helen, that you've acknowledged that many of these issues are DA-related issues. In terms of the overshadowing, we have included detailed shadow analysis as part of our proposal, so that's available for the residents to have a look at. But we will be reviewing this further at detailed design stage, and we're happy to speak further with the residents about that as well. Thank you.
There was also mention of access from church, from the lane. There was concern about that.
Yeah, so Church Lane is for us, that's actually a major selling point for our proposal. So under our proposal, we would widen Church Lane from about 3 metres at its narrowest point to 6 metres, which in the long term will significantly improve access for all of those residents on Church Street. We haven't considered at this stage how access will be provided during the construction stage, but that will certainly be an important consideration for us when we're at that point. Yes, yep.
And another point was made about privacy and overlooking from balconies.
Yeah, so again, we'll look at that in more detail at DA stage, but under our planning proposal, we have tried to orientate balconies away from Church Lane for that very reason, just to minimise the impact on privacy to those residents. Yeah, we'll look at that in more detail at DA stage.
Thank you. I'm just going through the points brought up. The height and bulk was another one. That is. Do you want to address height and bulk?
Just so that's in accordance with the city.
Yeah, so our building envelope was really based on Council's civic precinct planning study. And we have also included a report from GMU urban designers with our planning proposal that addresses some of those points.
All right. Does anyone from the panel have any questions to ask the applicant?
No, thanks.
And Jan, do you have any questions?
I just don't know whether, John, you wanted to raise the issue about providing some greater articulation to Pacific Highway by a variation in the...
Yeah. A weighted average setback. Yeah.
Yes, just the question that I think the panel may come to some decision on this later on, but the question was raised as to whether currently there's a 1 to 2 metre weighted average, whether that's sufficient for the sort of 10-storey building that we're talking about here. We have many examples in North Sydney of similar situations, but the setback from the podium is normally towards the 3 metres or greater, both from a visual and a wind point of view, so that you get a deflection of wind coming down the face of the building. But do you have any comment on that, as to that issue?
I might ask our architect, PTW, to address that point, if that's okay, Siobhan?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh.
No relation, by the way.
Perhaps
Just
several generations back somewhere, I don't know.
Possibly. Yes, I mean, the weighted average, I think, is already shown in the perspective that we had on the front cover of the report, and effectively it's probably quite sufficient, given that 8 and 10 stories is not that significant. In terms of a 1 metre setback, so it's actually quite a significant setback given the extreme lack of depth of the entire floor plate, especially. And I think it seems to be quite a successful. It's obviously not a DA design as yet; it's just an indicative design, but it certainly seems to be giving quite a certain reasonable depth to. And obviously, balconies will actually be 2 meters in depth, so there's always an opportunity there for further significant ingress. And then sun shades are obviously something that you can look at as well. So it's there's plenty of devices in a DA stage to make certain depth and articulation more exaggerated.
Thanks, Shauna.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, speakers, and thank you, the applicants team, for your comments and responses to community concerns. We'll now move on to the next application, or planning proposal, I should say, and that is for 45 Mclaren Street, North Sydney. So you might, Maddie, could you just ask Jane to
Jane's back in.
She's back in?
Yep.
Helen, should we leave for this item?
Oh yes, so sorry, if you are no longer interested in the next item, you are able to leave, because we've finished discussing and asking you any questions.
No further questions.
No problem. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
So for those people whose time is short, we are now moving on to 45 Mclaren Street, North Sydney. So if you have no interest in that particular planning proposal, you're welcome to leave now. So 45 Mclaren Street, North Sydney, it's again to amend the North Sydney LEP to rezone the site for high density residential from high to B4 mixed use. It has proposed an increase in height, an increase in floor space ratio, and a non-residential floor space ratio of 1:1. So the planning proposal is to ensure the envisaged built form is achieved and accompanied by a suite of suggested site-specific development controls to be incorporated within the North Sydney Development Control Plan. And also includes a voluntary planning agreement to deliver a number of public benefits. So We have a number of speakers registered to speak. We have Susan Frieda Blackwell is the first community representative who's registered to speak. And then we have representatives from the applicant who I can call on after that. So is Susan there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Okay. So Susan, you've been here for the whole meeting, so you know you have 5 minutes to speak. And we also received your written submission. So again, you can just succinctly summarize those key points. And if there's anything else we need to know, we have read your letter.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, panel. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my neighbours in this building, Francis and John Erickson and Anya Bokina, all of whom live on the north side of 150 Walker Street. We believe that there's a problem with town planning by the council, with each development is considered on its own without reference to the impacts from other neighbouring or even contiguous developments. We argue that council should commission a study that takes into effect the impacts, the cumulative impacts on solar access, privacy, green space and traffic from the developments at 168 Walker Street, 45 Mclaren and the massive proposal at East Walker Street. What is required is a holistic study, not a series of piecemeal decisions. But right now, we're stuck with considering the impacts of just one proposal, 45 Mclaren. I acknowledge the work done by the Planning Department at North Sydney Council in improving the design of the proposed building, but like Oliver Twist, I would like more, please. More privacy, more sun, more green space, and a lot more consideration of the impacts on the neighbouring buildings. The lack of privacy from the southern side of the new building is alarming and quite confronting. We argue that the new building should be set back at least 6 metres from the common pathway and that the mature trees currently there be retained. These trees would provide much needed green space for the development and provide privacy for the residents of both buildings. The height of the building also needs to be reduced in order for our building to continue to receive autumn, winter and spring sun. At present, only Harnett Street, our back lane, and the Ward Street car park will receive the sun. Surely the ratepayers at 150 Walker Street deserve a better deal than an arrangement that serves only the council's plan for Ward Street. Yes, there are improvements with this revised plan, but much more needs to be done before it can proceed to a gateway determination. Council was opposed to this development because of its undesirable impacts on the council's own Ward Street master plan. They've changed their minds, regrettably, and now want the panel to support their recommendation to proceed. Their concerns have been addressed, but the concerns of the immediate community most impacted by this development have not. There is thus an opportunity for the panel to recommend changes to the proposal that will benefit the neighbourhood as well as the council. So I call on the panel, particularly the community representative, to make the appropriate amendments to this proposal to satisfy all of the parties. And I reiterate our wish for a holistic study of all of the impacts of the 3 developments to be undertaken by council before any further approvals are given. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Just one question, Chair. Is Jane Van Hagen joined us in this meeting yet?
Yes.
Oh, is she there?
Well, I can't see her.
Oh, I thought she was in. I asked her when we first. Maddie, I thought you said she was back in.
Yeah, she's back in, but she's not sitting at her. Hang on, I have to give her a phone.
Oh, right, she's not in her chair.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay. If it's okay for one, we might just pause a moment. Are you able to get hold of Jane?
Yeah, I'm trying to give her a call. Okay, I'm trying to call her. Okay, she knows. Hopefully she should be here in a couple of seconds.
Get on for her?
Yep, she'll be on in a minute. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I've also sent her an email. Perhaps we might have to ask Susan to make her submission again.
Susan, are you able to do that?
Yes, that'd be fine. I can do that again.
Okay.
Much less than 5 minutes. It's about 2.5.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
So, Jane, Susan's already presented to us, but I've asked her just to repeat her submission for your benefit.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Helen. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my neighbours in this building, Francis and John Erickson and Anya Bakina, all of whom live on the north side of 150 Walker Street. We believe there is a problem with Town Council planning. Each development is considered on its own without reference to the impacts from other neighbouring or even contiguous developments. We argue that Council should commission a study that takes into effect the cumulative impacts on solar access, privacy, green space and traffic from the developments at 168 Walker Street, 45 Mclaren and the massive proposal at East Walker Street. What is required is a holistic study, not a series of piecemeal decisions. But right now we are stuck with considering the impacts of just one proposal, 45 Mclaren Street. I live at 150 Walker in an apartment on the second floor with a northern wall that abuts the pathway between 45 Mclaren and our building. Now, I acknowledge the work done by the Planning Department at North Sydney Council in improving the design of the proposed building. But like Oliver Twist, I would like more, please. More privacy, more sun, more green space, and a lot more consideration of the impacts on the neighbouring buildings. The lack of privacy from the southern side of the new building is alarming and quite confronting. The new building should be set back at least 6 metres from the common pathway, and the mature trees currently there must be retained. These trees would provide much needed green space for the development and provide privacy for the residents of both buildings. The height of the building also needs to be reduced in order for our building to continue to receive autumn, winter and spring sun. At present, only Harnett Street, our back lane, and the Ward Street car park will receive the sun. Surely the ratepayers at 150 Walker Street deserve a better deal than an arrangement that serves only the council's plan for Ward Street. Yes, there are some improvements with this revised plan, but much more needs to be done before it can proceed to a gateway determination. Council was opposed to this development because of its undesirable impacts on Council's own Ward Street master plan. They've changed their minds, regrettably, and now want the panel to support their recommendation to proceed. Their concerns have been addressed, but the concerns of the immediate community most impacted by this development have not. There is thus an opportunity for the panel to recommend changes to the proposal that will benefit the neighbourhood as well as the council. So I call on the panel, particularly the community representative, to make the appropriate amendments to this proposal to satisfy all of the parties. And I reiterate our wish for a holistic study of all of the impacts of the development to be undertaken by council before any approvals are given. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan, and thank you for taking the time to repeat that. It's appreciated. We don't have anybody else from the community registered to speak, so I'm going to just go straight to the applicant. So I've got here Michael Grassi from Podia, Stephen White from Urbis, and Sophie Persian from Urbis, as well as Matthew Davis from Bates Smart Architects. I'm not sure who is going to be the spokesperson today, but I guess the first thing I'd like you to do is address any issues that have been raised in the submissions, and again, anything else that you would like to raise for the benefit of the panel's deliberations.
Thanks, Helen. Michael Grassi here. I'm director and co-founder at Podia, where, as you described, the developer and applicant responsible for the planning proposal you have before you today. On the call, we have Matt Davis from Bates Smart, our architect, and we also had Stephen White from Urbis, who are our town planners, and they are also available for any queries that the panel or the community may have. Just a bit of background for the panel. We secured the site in 2020, and we engaged well-respected architects, Bates Smart, who have a fantastic track record for delivering excellent buildings in the North Sydney CBD. Together, we developed a vision and urban design response for the site that sought to align itself with the exciting new vision for North Sydney, namely in response to the Ward Street Master Plan and the arrival of the new metro station. The site itself is an island site. It's large in size at just shy of 1,800 square metres, and it comprises a small 4-storey residential flat building developed in the 60s, and that sits within the context of the Ward Street Master Plan. It's only 100 metres from the new metro station, and it also sits opposite the major mixed-use redevelopment being undertaken by Aqualand at Walker Street. So the surrounding context for this site is extremely dense environment, and a 4-storey building built in the 60s is out of step with the prevailing character of this part of North Sydney CBD. We lodged a planning proposal with council in late 2020, and throughout 2021, we worked closely with council officers to align our vision with council's vision for that part of North Sydney. At no point did council refuse or express their lack of support for the development. The process with council was a collaborative process, and through that process, council raised a number of issues with our original proposal, and the process that we engaged with council was, as I said, a collaborative one, and council officers always provided an open forum, an open discussion, debate about how best to achieve a positive urban design outcome for the site. And so that process, I guess, culminated with the support recommendation you have before you today. Importantly, our proposal ensures that there'll be no solar impact after 9 AM to the new public space developed as part of the Ward Street Master Plan. This was a major threshold issue for council, and they wanted to ensure that solar access to that new public space was protected. And that was an issue that council weren't willing to bend on. And so the final proposal you have before you ensures that that new public space will not have a shadow impact after 9 AM. I acknowledge Susan's comments made earlier, and I thank her for them. A few just brief comments in reply to some of the points she made. Our proposal and the proposed DCP controls offer a generous setback to Walker Street. I don't have the exact data in front of me, and perhaps our architect can verify, but we have a podium setback in the order of 5.5 to 6 metres from the footpath, and we also have a further building setback in the order of 4.5 metres. So we've got about a 10-metre setback to the main building tower that sits on the site from Mclaren Street. And secondly, the orientation and the design of the building ensures that the apartments in 150 Walker will receive good solar access in accordance with state planning policies, and that's something that we worked hard on. The other sort of prevailing impact to solar access for 150 Walker Street is in fact the Aqualand development, which sits on the other side of the street. That tower is significantly larger than ours and also has a solar impact on 150 Walker Street that is going to occur with or without our building going there. And was approved well before our time. So that was just some brief comments in relation to Susan's comments, and happy to address any further comments you may raise. But really, we're grateful for the opportunity to be here today with a recommendation for support. As I said, we work collaboratively with Council to address a number of their major issues, and those issues have been in the form of the amended planning proposal, which has the Council officers' support. So thank you very much, and happy to address any questions from the panel or Susan if need be.
One of the other points brought up in both her submission and in some written submissions was also the loss of trees and the landscape setting of the mature trees. So could you address how you would propose to meet that landscape character?
The intent is for those trees to be retained. We too share the view that they are, a beautiful feature of Mclaren Street, Walker Street, and our intention is to preserve them. It's typically an issue that's addressed at DA. There's also some existing power lines in that street that we'd look to also perhaps underground. And so we'd have to look at the coordination of existing services in the street as well as undergrounding of power lines and the like. But our intention is to preserve those trees because we share the view that they are part of that beautiful, quintessential North Sydney character, leafy character kind of identity and aesthetic. So our intention is to retain those trees, and that's certainly reflected in the response that we put in our report, and that will be reflected in our DA submission following approval of the planning proposal.
Okay.
Sorry, Michael, I might just add.
Can I just say that the trees that Susan's referring to are not those on the street. They're the ones between 150 Walker and your proposal. And I can understand from what I can see on the plans that those trees are going to be removed along the common boundary, the south boundary of your property. You could just
where the through site link is that?
Yeah, yes. That's what we're talking about. I think Susan's concern is loss of green space there, and I want to hear also what you're planning for the management of the podium greenery and whether that's being considered.
Part of the proposal is to create an improved through site link between Walker and Harnett Street. Harnett Street's the laneway that sits on the other side of the site, on the western side of the site. And yes, there are some existing trees that sit on our boundary that will be removed in order to create a more safe through site link. That through site link that's currently there is a very narrow through site link and doesn't have very safe after hours surveillance aspects to it. So the intent, and certainly the discussions with council, were to widen that and to make that better lit at night and make that a more trafficable interface to encourage permeability and pedestrian friendly nature of the sort of surrounding street network. On the other side of Harnett Street, eventually the Ward Street master plan will be developed, so people walking from Walker Street up into the Ward Street master plan will be able to go through that through site link and access the public space in the Ward Street master plan. So our architects and us and council for that matter took the view that in improving pedestrian permeability through this part of North Sydney was a positive outcome. I take your point about sort of screening and privacy. The wall that we have on that boundary, the southern boundary of our site, is a privacy wall. You won't be looking at windows. It doesn't have any openings on that elevation, so you won't be looking into other people's apartments on that specific elevation.
Michael, it might be also worth adding that the landscaping did suggest a possible green wall along that edge as well, on the through site link in the landscape concept.
Yep, and very, very, very happy to work with the neighbours through the DA process to deal with those sort of sensitive interfaces. I think it's a fair and valid point, but we're also trying to create a pedestrian-friendly sort of environment as well. So we feel it's a positive outcome for the broader community to create a more open, pedestrian-friendly sort of through site link there.
Are there any other comments or questions from the panel?
Yes, Helen, can I ask Michael, you may have, or I assume you've read the officer's report, Michael, you might have picked up a comment from one of the council staff with regard to access to loading, the difficulty or the suggested difficulties of on-street loading and whether or not you're going to have loading within the building itself, and whether the retail outlets will be sufficiently private, as it were, but particularly the loading access. Can you address? They're all in the same comments, actually.
Yeah, look, this was an issue that sort of attracted quite a bit of discussion with council. Initially, the suggestion was for us to consider loading off Harnett Street, which sits higher on the site. The challenge with loading off Harnett Street is that it's a very tight street as it is, and the site falls down to Walker Street. So we weren't able to provide any activation along Harnett Street or retail activation because all of that space would be absorbed by either loading docks and or ramps. And it was extremely challenging, and we would have had to have a very, very deeply excavated basement to be able to deliver that loading outcome off Harnett Street. So the more sort of viable option was to load, to have access to the basement off the lower part of the site being Walker Street. The loading dock sits within the development. We're not going to be loading in the street. We're going trucks, waste trucks, delivery vehicles, removalists, deliveries associated with the retail will all be done inbound to the site. They will come in off Walker Street into a loading dock, handle any loading within the concealed basement, and then leave the development. We're not undertaking any loading in Harnett Street or Walker Street. So it's all contained within the basement, and that yielded a better overall design outcome for the basement, not having to have extensive excavation should we come off Harnett Street as was originally suggested.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry.
Can I ask a question regarding the setbacks for the southern boundary?
Yes, you may. I just want to clarify to the community representatives that it's not a question and answer. So the community has a chance to make their representations, and the applicant has a chance to respond, and then the panel does. So there's no opportunity to have Q&A, Susan. So apologies for that. So, okay, so back to you, Jane. Can you just rephrase your question?
I just wanted to ask the architects if in the investigation of the shade and shadow for the effect on 150 Walker, were they aware of the residential apartments facing north on that boundary and at lower levels? I think Susan's at one of the lower levels on that 8-storey building. And can you give us a bit more indication about the access to sun in particular for that property, please?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Jane. Yeah, we're acutely aware of the challenges of solar access on this site, and I think Susan, in fact, made the point of the need to be looking at this holistically and understand the cumulative effects. And indeed, much of the response to 45 Mclaren Street is representative of that, in that we are working within some inherited conditions, and we're in fact working within the shadow that's going to be cast from the development at 168 Walker Street. So the fate of solar access to the northern facade of 150 is substantially determined by external factors beyond 45 Mclaren. What we have done is set our development back to sit within the or to sit within that shadow, and also step down at the top of the building and step back at the upper 2 levels to preserve some morning sun into that northern facade in the areas that aren't affected by the 168 Walker Street shadow. We are aware of the planning of the building at 150 where the majority of the apartments benefit from multiple aspects, and our proposal has sought, or in fact achieves, the maintenance of the morning solar access up to the 11 a.m. window, which is really when the shadowing from 168 occurs.
That answer your question, Jane? Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments from John or Jan?
No, thanks.
Jan, I can't see you. No, you will.
Indicated I've nodded my head, perhaps you can't see me.
All right, yeah, no, I can't see everyone on the screen. Thank you very much for making that presentation, Michael, and also to your team. As there are no other speakers, and I think we've addressed most of the issues raised, I think that is probably it. So thank you for your time today, for attending the meeting, and and thank you everyone from the community for making representations. So I will now officially close the public part of the meeting at 1:02 p.m. and the panel will withdraw and make our deliberations, and the report will be available on the council portal probably at the end of the week or early next week. So thank you very much, and I'll see you again. Bye for now.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, everyone.